I would say today's daf, Yevamos Dalid, was filled with an incredible amount of information. So the sugi really began on the bottom of Gimel Amud Beis, 3b, where the Gemara discussed the idea that had there not been a Gzeira Shava of Aleha from Achos Ishto, the case of one's wife's sister, to the case of Yibum, one would have actually thought that one would be permitted to do Yibum with Achos Ishto. So the Gemara says, why? Why would one have thought that? Because the Gemara talks about the concept of Asi Aseh v'dochelos Aseh, that a positive commandment could go ahead and set aside a prohibition. The ability for an Aseh to be dochelos Aseh. Now the truth is, it's important to bear in mind that in general, Yibum operates with that principle. Because remember again, Yibum is a surviving brother marrying his deceased brother's widow. That's normally a situation of an erva. Yet Yibum allows that. So Yibum in and of itself is a manifestation of aseh dochelos aseh, a positive commandment setting aside a prohibition. So the Gemara says again, you might have thought that that would apply to all arayos. The Gzeira Shava of Aleha limits it to one very specific situation of my brother's widow, but precludes Yibum from happening in every other scenario of erva. Once the Gemara introduced this concept of asiyah aseh v'dochelos aseh, that a positive commandment could set aside a prohibition, that takes up the rest of the discussion on Daf Dalid. So to go through some of the salient points, so the Gemara explains, from where do we learn the concept of aseh dochelos aseh, that a positive commandment can set aside a prohibition? So the Gemara says, interestingly enough, we learn it from the juxtaposition of we learn it from psukim of tzitzis and shatnez. The Torah in Chumash Devarim discusses the prohibitions where shatnez, and then right afterwards goes ahead and says Gedilim Taseloch, goes ahead and says that you should go ahead and make tzitzis. And the Gemara understands that although there's a prohibition to wear a mixture of wool and linen, when it comes to tzitzis, one is permitted to wear tzitzis, which is shatnez. So the Gemara says that concept, however, is predicated on one more principle, which is darshin and smuchin. That we go ahead and we juxtapose, that we darshin, we find meaning in juxtapositions. Juxtapositions are not random. So if two psukim are next to each other in the Torah, that is to teach us that halacha l'maisa, again, they are to be learned out from each other. The Gemara then went on to explain that not everyone subscribes to the notion of smuchin. Some don't darshin juxtapositions. However, the Gemara then explained that even those opinions, most notably Rabbi Yehuda, who normally does not darshan smuchin, ultimately agrees in Sefer Devarim, which we call Mishnah Torah, that we go ahead and we darshan smuchin. The Gemara then gave a whole number of different examples. In halacha l'maisa again, how we darshan smuchin, when we darshan smuchin, the Gemara explains why is it that in Sefer Devarim, even those who don't normally darshan smuchin would darshan smuchin, to which the Gemara explains either because it's muchach or it's mufna. That the psukim in Chumash Devarim are either muchach, meaning it's clear. Muchach means clear. It's clear that ultimately, again, this pasuk is to be darshaned, or mufna means it's superfluous. Either way, that leaves the psukim ultimately, again, of Sefer Devarim open to be darshan. So I will say that's the construct. So again, Yibum is really based on aseh dochelos aseh, the Gzeira Shava of Aleha. So really limits the ability of aseh dochelos aseh to only one specific erva, namely a brother's widow, but precludes Yibum with any other kind of widow. The notion of aseh dochelos aseh is learned out from tzitzis. That's predicated on darshan smuchin. Not everyone darshan smuchin in general, but in dvarim, in which the psukim of shatnez and tzitzis are found, ultimately everyone darshan smuchin. The Gemara then goes on Daled Amud Beis to get into a little bit more of a discussion regarding shatnez. And a couple of very interesting concepts come out from shatnez over here. Number one, the Gemara teaches me that halacha l'maisa, shatnez is only asr derech levisha, when one is wearing the garment. That's why, for example, mochrei ksus, ultimately those who are, garment salesmen, garment merchants, have the ability to hack their wares by buying the various garments. And that's not considered to be a violation of shatnez. That being said, it doesn't always have to be, let's say, actively wearing. For example, derech ha'alah, something that normally covers a person. So, for example, a cover with shatnez would be problematic as well. One doesn't wear shatnez. So you could have derech ha'alah that is dumya de levisha. So you could have something that's upon you that ultimately is like wearing. Halacha l'maisa, just like wearing something, you get hana from it. So too again, derech ha'alah, something is upon you, like a cover, and you're getting benefit from it. ultimately that's a problem of shatnez as well. But again, this comes to exclude the case of, let's say, the mochrei ksus, the people who are going ahead and wearing the garments, or I should say wearing them on top of them to hack the garments. There's no kavanah to wear, there's no kavanah to get benefit. Their kavanah is one thing and one thing only, which is to be able to sell the garments. The Gemara then transitions into a deeper discussion, the mitzvah of tzitzis, which Emir Hashem we will pick up with tomorrow. We ended off with the very beautiful and important idea from the Noah Megadim, that why is it that aseh dochelos aseh? Why is it that a positive commandment has the ability to set aside a prohibition? In other words, how do we understand that on a hashkafic level? And the Noah Megadim said so beautifully that the fundamental distinction between an aseh and a los aseh, a mitzvah and an aveira, is that when it comes to a mitzvah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzarif machshava lemaisa. When it comes to a mitzvah, Hashem counts the thought, the desire, the want to do a mitzvah like the actual mitzvah itself. Whereas by an aveira, Baruch Hashem, the Rebbe Shalom only holds us accountable for actions, but not for thoughts. The thought to do an aveira is not the equivalent of the actual commission of the aveira itself. And therefore, it says the Noah Megadim, on a hashkafic level, a mitzvah, an aseh, is so much more powerful than a los aseh. Because an aseh, a positive commandment, the mitzvah, could be performed ideally, actionally, but if one is precluded from performing it actionally, one has the ability to go ahead and yearn for it cognitively. That is a dynamic that exists only by mitzvos and not by aveiros. And of course, the Musar Haskell for us is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands that sometimes we are precluded from performing certain mitzvos. Sometimes we are precluded from acting upon the things we really want to do and really want to be. But the Rebbe Shalom, the one who looks into the hearts of all men, is able to see not only what we do, but also what we want. Chavra, wishing everyone a wonderful day and a good Erev Shabbos.